Hello HorrorTube, I am Torstein from Cinema Terror, and I'm sorry for not being all that original today. I know there are already plenty of other Friday the 13th ranking vids here on YouTube, but to my defense, I really wanted to rewatch all of the Jason movies. So I figured this was the best way to share my thoughts on the franchise, and it's an excuse to enjoy myself a bit extra for a few days by rewatching all of the wonderful Jason Voorhees films for the umpteenth time. Like so many other Jason fans, I grew up with these films during the 80s and 90s, and they played a huge part in me becoming the horror fan that I am today. Thanks, I think. I've watched all of these films so many times during my life, and I always seem to find new things to appreciate about most of them. Yeah, some of them might not be good movies on a technical or story-wise level, but I can still have some fun with every single one of them. Then again, I am also the kind of guy who enjoys stuff like Zipperface, so I tend to find and look for the positives in most horror stuff. The Friday the 13th series started back in 1980, at the very start of the slasher boom, and it has been a big money machine ever since. Yeah, we might not be getting a new Jason movie every so often anymore, but Jason is still big business, popping up on all types of merchandise, and even in popular video games like Mortal Kombat and his very own online multiplayer game, Friday the 13th: The Game. Even though Jason's popularity might be higher than ever today, the Friday films has always split horror fans. The movies was usually to be found on both the best of and the worst of list, voted by the readers of the old Fangoria magazines, and of course film critics hated them all from the start, with a passion.
Our next movie is Friday the 13th, the final chapter, an immoral and reprehensible piece of trash that sold more tickets on its opening weekend than any other movie so far in 1984, and that is a very, very depressing commentary. It really makes me sad.
Famous film critic Gene Siskel even went so far as encouraging the public to send angry letters to the home address of Charles Bluhdom, who was the chairman of Golf Plus Western, the owners of Paramount at the time, and even Betsy Palmer, who of course played Jason's mother Pamela. Whatever people might say about negative critics on YouTube, I can't say I've seen any of them, or us I guess, tell the audience to send angry letters to 64-year-old actresses just because they choose to take part in a film they didn't like. And hopefully no one will prove me wrong by linking to a video where that exact thing happens. Anyways, enough of my rambling. That's not what you pressed this video for, so let's rather get down to business. Here is my ranking of all 12 Friday the 13th movies, and yes, I am including Freddy vs. Jason on this list. Coming in at the bottom is the 9th movie in the series, and the first one that skipped the Friday the 13th part of the name, with the first New Line Cinema effort, Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday. It kinda sucks to put this at the very bottom, as they do deserve more credit than several other Jason films, just because they at least try to do something different and new, and I'm sure for that alone it has its fans out there, as creativity and trying to be unique is of course to be applauded. The sad part is that none of the new elements they added to the Jason and Camp Crystal Lake mythology worked for me. None of it, and it never did. I can still remember being 12 years old and renting this on VHS and being disappointed by it basically being a rip-off of The Hidden, a film that I already at the time had seen countless of times, as it quickly became a childhood favorite of mine. The body jumping element did just not work for me in a Friday the 13th film, and introducing more Voorheeses to the story did little for me as well. Director Adam Marcus had just gotten out of film school before getting the assignment to direct Jason Goes to Hell, and he has said that he had not seen The Hidden at the time, which is believable as it wasn't the biggest hit in the world, and Marcus was only 24 years old at the time. But someone at New Line Cinema should have said something to somebody, as New Line Cinema also handled the distribution of The Hidden. To be a bit positive though, as Jason Goes to Hell is not a total failure or anything like that, even though I'm putting it as low as I am. The film does have a certain young energy to it, and Stephen Williams as Creighton Duke is awesome.
I'm going to say 2 words to you, Mr. Duke, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Shoot.
Jason Voorhees.
Well, that makes me think of a little girl in a pink dress, sticking a hot dog through a donut.
It's just too bad that this character didn't get more to do. It's also created in the early 90s, so a lot of self-aware humor is added to the film, which I'm not the biggest fan of, making the entire 90s a bit rough for me as a horror fan. Oh, and it also tried to set up the Freddy vs. Jason fight by having the Freddy glove pop up at the end to bring Jason's mask down to hell, which was pretty cool, so yeah, Jason Goes to Hell, not the worst movie in the world, and certainly not the final Friday.
Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday.
At number 11 we have the 2009 Platinum Dunes remake, simply titled Friday the 13th. I know this has its fans out there, and it was the only film in the franchise that I'd only seen once before revisiting it again because of this list. It was fun to see Jason back in action, and the film has some brutal kill scenes, but other than that it is just lacking of everything else. The story is simple, which is fine, but the characters... oh god, the characters. The young adults in this film are the least sympathetic and the most annoying out of the entire series. I understand that many other slasher fans want the victims to be irritating, so it will become satisfying to see them killed off. But for me personally, I want to feel for them and root for them to live instead. I believe the strongest Friday films are the ones with great protagonists, and I can't believe they didn't even attempt to give us at least one or two characters that we could care about in this remake.
Your tits are stupendous.
It does have a more expensive visual look than the majority of the franchise, but I also have a problem with that aspect of it. It just looks too polished for my taste, and it feels like another Platinum Dunes remake that failed to understand why we fell in love with the original in the first place. Is it all terrible though? Nah. It avoids being boring, so it is a decent time waster to put on if you have nothing else to watch. And again, I do recognize that it has its fans out there, but the 2009 Friday the 13th remake is just not for me.
His name was Jason, and today is his birthday.
In our spot number 10, we see Jason take a summer break from Crystal Lake by heading to the big city of New York in Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. This would be the last Paramount distributed Friday film, and it is pretty obvious that they were running out of ideas of what to do with the series at this point. Taking Jason out of Camp Crystal Lake was not a bad idea, as the series has started to have a repetitive feel to it, but could really a Jason movie set in a big city work? Well, we'll probably never know, as most of this film takes place on a boat. I don't think Jason gets to New York before the last 30 minutes of the film, and that was obviously a big letdown the first time I saw this.
You a dead meat slime bag! Yo man, it's cool, man, it's cool.
Putting the setting aside, the film has very little new to offer. Jason is not that menacing in it, and they go some weird places with his character that doesn't work. In fact, I think all the horror elements of this film is pretty weak. To make up for it, there is some more comedy added to the mix, and they do have a few standout moments that make the overall experience enjoyable for Friday fans. And they did have some fun with the promotion for it, including dressing up Kane Hodder as Jason and sending him to the Arsenio Hall show.
How are you?
Jason Takes Manhattan has its problems, and is a film for fans of the franchise only, much like the very next film on this list.
Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, New York has a new problem.
Jason X. That's right, on spot number 9 we have another vacation for Jason, and this time he is sent out to space, a place that has been said to kill off franchises in the past. Jason X puts an end to a nearly 10-year-old drought, where we didn't get a single entry to the Friday franchise. Instead, most of the 90s went away with New Line trying to figure out a way to get the big match between Freddy and Jason going. So putting Jason in space was done in a very practical way of delivering another film to the fans, without having to be afraid of doing anything with the story that could interfere with the crossover film. Jason X feels like a fan film with a decent budget behind it. It feels like the filmmakers were fans and just wanted to have a blast with the Jason character, and at the same time be respectful while catering to the fanbase. There are plenty of fun stuff in it, including the fan favorite Lightweight Nitrogen kill scene, the sleeping bag throwback, and Uber Jason. But it sadly didn't do much as a horror film, and the sci-fi elements is nice for a one-off, but I think that most Jason fans would prefer it if the big guy keeps his feet on planet Earth in the future.
I don't think he's out there.
Why don't you just stick your head out and have a peek?
And at number 8 we take a new turn with Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. This fifth Friday film changed things up by not bringing Jason back after promising the final demise in the previous final chapter, but rather went with the ballsy move of introducing a copycat killer. Other than that, it plays out pretty much exactly like the other Jason films, and I don't think I even understood the final reveal of the killer when I was younger, as in all the scenes where he keeps the Jason mask on, with the blue mark instead of the red, he basically just acts like Jason Voorhees. So you can ignore this poor twist and just enjoy it as a Jason film if you want to. Some fans dislike the exploitation vibe that the film has, but if you are familiar with my channel, then I don't think I need to tell you that I kinda like that style. In Friday 5, it comes from director Danny Steinman, who had come up doing smaller films like the X-rated High Rise from 1973 and the 1980 mystery film The Unseen, before making my favorite film of his with the 1984 exploitation film Savage Streets, starring Linda Blair. He gives us some cool kills and some funny characters, but the main problem with the film is the hero of the franchise, Tommy Jarvis. He was played by Corey Feldman in the 4th film and Tom Matthews in the 6th, and both those versions are much better than what we get by actor John Shepherd in A New Beginning. Not that I blame Shepherd for any of that, it's just the way the character is written and the surprisingly little amount of character development he gets that makes me not care that much for him. While A New Beginning tried and does promise with a new title for something different, it's pretty much more of the same, and for Jason fans that's not a bad thing, but this is also another entry that non-Jason fans will find little to cheer about and can easily skip.
Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
And at number 7, we have what I believe will be the first surprise on this list. Here we have the very first sequel with Friday the 13th, Part 2. This came out in only less than 12 months after the first film, and marks the very first time we get to see grown-up Jason walk around and terrorize camp counselors. Now why is this so low on the list, you might ask? Well, I'm not a fan of this take on Jason. The second look isn't bad at all, but his movement and persona is not that intimidating. He has not become the unstoppable killing machine that he would later be known for. Oh, and if you ever wondered if Jason needs to take a dump, then your answer will be in this film. He gets to do quite a lot in this film, and it does feature some nice brutal kills, which did make it banned from being shown in cinemas here in Norway. I do have a bit of a gripe against some of that awesomeness though, as some kills are clearly ripped off from other movies. The most famous one being a nearly identical kill that was done nearly 10 years prior in Mario Bava's Bay of Blood. On the more positive side, this one does have one of the best final girls of the entire franchise, with Amy Steele as Ginny.
He must have seen his mother get killed, and all just because she loved him.
She's an unlikely final girl as she's not the youngest, innocent one of the bunch, and she just has different characteristics than what we got used to during the slasher boom of the 80s. Speaking of final girls, I didn't care all that much for the intro to this film, which goes on for way too long and is only there to kill off Adrienne King's character from the first film. That part felt unnecessary. Overall, this is the one out of the original 4 that doesn't hold up that much for me over the years, but even so, Friday the 13th Part 2 is a good one to check out for any fans of 80s slashers.
Is not over. Friday the 13th, Part 2.
And following up right after it at number 6 is Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, with some awesome funky music to it as well. Steve Miner, who also held the director chair on the second one, gets to try to bring Jason out in theaters with the short-lived 3D craze that quickly came and went in the early 80s. This one does pretty much the same as the second film, but it also does everything a bit better. Here we get the Jason Voorhees that we all grown to love, fiercely stalking through the woods, being the horror monster we all remember him as. This is also the entry where he finally gets his hand on the infamous hockey mask. I don't think there is any other franchise where the anti-hero gets its most memorable trait in the third entry, making Jason's mask quite unique in that regard. I also like the young adults in this film. While she is only supposed to be a supporting character, Catherine Parks impressed me in a role as Vera. I like that girl and was sad to see her not make it to the end. I know that there is a split opinion on Larry Cerner's loser character Shelley, but I think his inclusion gave them an opportunity to show different sides of Vera instead of just making her another beautiful young woman. Jason's murderous rampage also made this film the second Friday film to be banned from theaters here in Norway. I can't find any information on the movies after this, so I guess everyone just give up the idea of bringing Jason to the big screen here and rather just let them go directly to VHS. Friday the 13th Part 3 is a fun, solid slasher, and I hope I will get the chance to watch it on the big screen in full 3D one day. We are entering top 5, and this spot we got what I might say is the most underrated out of the franchise, with Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. This one left Tommy Jarvis behind and introduced us to a new adversary for Jason in Tina Shepard, played by Lar Park Lincoln. Tina is different from all of the other Final Girls in that she has psychokinetic powers, making fans dub this entry as Jason vs. Carrie. Tina is a cool character to include into this franchise, and it makes it easier for me to overlook the other more stereotypical supporting young adults that are of course there partying, smoking dope and having sex, as we would expect young people to do on vacation. This was also the first film to feature fan favorite Kane Hodder as Jason, and there is a reason why fans have singled him out as their favorite mask-wearing version of Mr. Voorhees. Sadly, a lot of the bloody mess that he makes in this film has been lost as the MPAA was tired of the Friday franchise and ordered them to cut out a ridiculous amount of gore. Even more sad is how this footage has not been kept, and the only available look at it now is from rough footage that has been added as special features to some DVD and Blu-ray releases. The New Blood has enough cool stuff in it to deserve a second look by those who might have dismissed it as just another Friday film, so if you happen to be one of those, then give it a second chance.
Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood.
And at number 4 we have the fan favorite Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. This one continues and gives us an end to the Tommy Jarvis saga that started in the 4th and continued with the 5th film. Not that there is much continuity with the characters over these films though. Jason Lives stands out by going directly for fun and entertainment. It's self-aware and makes fun of itself and its genre, and director Tom McLaughlin managed to balance the comedy out nicely without it ever feeling disrespectful to the character of Jason Voorhees. The film is said to be a bit based on the good old Universal monster movies, and you can clearly see the influence of that in Jason Lives. And there are plenty of awesome, fun kills to enjoy, a great cast of cool characters, and Jason Voorhees in top shape. If there is one Friday film I would recommend for a group of people that just want to gather around with some beer to have a fun evening, it would definitively be Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. And the first out of the top 3 is the long-awaited crossover event that was the 2003 Freddy vs. Jason. This might just be the biggest crossover event in horror history, even if I include the dearly beloved monster mashups in the Universal horror films of the 1940s. Fans had been waiting and discussing who would win between Freddy and Jason ever since the late 80s, and you can find comments about this becoming a possibility by producers all the way back while they were making The New Blood in 1988. But did it deliver? Well, it made number 3 on this list for a reason. They deserve all the praise in the world for being able to bring a coherent story out of this team-up. I felt satisfied both as a Jason fan and as a Freddy fan after watching this. And having read about the other story ideas they considered for this during the 90s, I'm very happy that the final result ended up being this enjoyable piece of cinema that can be enjoyed both by fans and non-fans of these two lovely horror franchises. Some of the blame for why this is so high on this list also comes from me being such a huge fan of Freddy Krueger, and the film feels a bit like a Nightmare on Elm Street film with Jason guest starring. But even so, the big guy gets plenty of awesome memorable scenes and also has a higher body count than our Dream Demon. And who won in the end? Who was the strongest out of these two adorable serial killers? Well, you'll have to watch Freddy vs. Jason and be the judge yourself.
Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
And now we only have two movies left. Who goes on the very top and who comes in at the second place? Well, the runner-up is none other than the very beginning of all of this, with the first Friday the 13th film from 1980. This first Friday the 13th is a landmark of the slasher genre. Halloween opened the doors for American slasher films, but Friday the 13th made indie filmmakers believe that this was possible to do without needing the flair and sheer amount of talent that John Carpenter and his crew had. Not to take anything away from director Sean Cunningham, as he displays quite an eye for scene setup on this one. Take the opening scene as an example of how to construct a terrifying intro for your film. I actually think he deserves more credit as a director than what he has gotten for his work on this film. There is a reason why this franchise has had so many sequels, while most other early 80s slashers that tried to launch a long-lasting franchise failed. And all of that can't just be blamed on this being one of the earliest ones to hit the cinemas.
Don't let her live.
I won't, Jason. I won't.
The story of the first Friday is pretty simple, and I'm sure you already know all about it. A group of young camp counselors head out to Camp Crystal Lake to get things ready before the children are about to arrive. But their blissful summer days gets interrupted when a bloodthirsty serial killer goes loose on them. And it's not Jason who is the killer in this one, by the way. I love how the film doesn't just focus on anyone specific at the camp, but rather make them all come off as your average young adults. The lack of stereotypes that would later become the norm of these films makes it all more suspenseful, as you never know who, if any, will survive. I also like the innocence of them, and it shows that you can make a slasher film without having to make the characters annoying on purpose, so that the viewer will get some pleasure by seeing them being hacked and sliced to pieces. Friday the 13th might not actually get the praise and recognition it deserves on its own, due to how many entries the franchise would end up getting. But this is a classic of the horror genre and one of the best slasher films of all time.
You may only see it once, but that will be enough. Friday the 13th.
So what could be better than all of that praise I had for the very first film? Well, we have one more movie left, and that is the excellent Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. This is the culmination of the first stage of Friday films, and it just does nearly everything better than the previous ones, thanks to the great work of director Joseph Zito, who had already proven himself a few years earlier with his own slasher film, The Prowler. Jason is menacing beyond belief in this, but the real reason why this stands above all the other 12 films comes down to relatable characters that I enjoy spending 90 minutes with. Corey Feldman was awesome in this as a 12-year-old Tommy Jarvis. He is there to represent the horror fans. He reads Fangoria, he makes horror masks, he is enthusiastic about everything, and he's more courageous than most of the adults. It also works so brilliantly by having Jason go up against this little kid who was at the same age as Jason when he himself drowned.
Jason!
The rest of the teens also stand out, with crazy-ass Crispin Glover in it as Dead Fuck Jimmy. Also, I have to mention the always gorgeous Judy Aronson who plays Samantha. I grew up with the biggest crush on her after watching and rewatching the 1985 teen comedy Weird Science, so seeing her in the final chapter as well just makes the film even more enjoyable for me. And it would be criminal of me not to also mention the superb gore effects helmed by Tom Savini, who returned to the Friday series after sitting out on the first two sequels. Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, has everything you could want from an 80s slasher. It is, in my humble opinion, the best Friday the 13th film out there out of all these awesome movies, also making it one of the best slasher films of all time.
Jason's reign of terror is over. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Jason's unlucky day.
So, that was my ranking of all of the Friday the 13th films. Did you agree with the majority of it, parts of it, or were you wondering what the hell I was smoking when I came up with this? Let me know your thoughts on the list and the Friday franchise in general in the comment section below. And if you think this was a fun video and want me to do more ranking videos in the future, then do leave a like and or a positive comment on this. And please do tell me which type of ranking video you want me to do next. A new franchise, or how about ranking all the films from a certain director? The comment section is open for all of your suggestions. If you're new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe and check out my other stuff. Have a great day wherever in the world you are, and thank you for watching Cinema Terror.